Google has announced its newest device in its smartphone lineup, the Pixel 5. And with it comes a shift in Google's smartphone strategy. But what is that strategy, and how does it compare to other smartphone makers? Stick around. Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliette Beauchamp, and I am joined, as always, by Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus, as well as Macworld and PC World writer Michael Simon. So thank you both, as always, so much for calling in and joining me. Ken, I'm going to go to you first. What is the deal sort of with this new Pixel 5, and what are some of the, what's a little bit about Google's new strategy here?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that, of course, with the Pixel 5, J.R. Raphael wrote about this for Computer World today, so I'm sort of cribbing from his understanding of it. But with the Pixel 5, it looks like Google is sort of taking a little bit of a step back from pushing into the high end, giving up on some features. You don't get the top end processor. And it looks like, what the company is doing is making a real play for sort of that mid pack. We've talked a lot about how Apple has sort of done that with its opening or entry model iPhone. And, it's sort of interesting. One of the points that JR has made, and I agree with, is that it's sort of like back to the future for Google, because the company started out kind of at low to middle range of phones, made the big push for the high-end expensive phones, and is now kind of backing off that and is, with the Pixel 5 at least. I mean, we're looking at a price reduction. When's the last time a new phone came out that you saw, something like that? I mean, it does happen, but I think that sort of speaks to what Google's up to. Michael, I'm curious. I mean, do you think I got that right? Is that how you see it?
I mean, on the surface, yeah, it is cheaper. It's $100 cheaper than the Pixel 4 started at. The Pixel 4 started at $799 with a 5.8 inch screen, I believe, or 5.7 inch screen. This is $699 with a 6.6 inch screen, and that's all well and good. And that's, less money is always good. However, this is how Google should have started the Pixel experience, so to speak. They started going after the mid-ish upper end. The original Pixel was $649, which doesn't seem like a lot now, but back then it was. And it went up from there. So last year's Pixel 4 XL with 128 gigs of storage was $1,000. And that is just way too much for what Google wanted to do. The Pixel platform, so to speak, it's a vessel for Android and for Google's AI. It always has been. And Google got into this kind of arms race with Apple and Samsung to create these flagship phones, and with flagship parts that are expensive. I'm not saying Google was gouging people, because they were on par with the Galaxies and the iPhone Pros of the world. But no one was looking for Google. No one was looking to Google for a phone that costs $900 or $1,000. It's just not happening. And I think the pandemic kind of pushed that along, as did the success of the Pixel 3a last year. So that was $400. It lowered the processor to a Snapdragon 6 something. I don't remember the exact number.
I think it may be the 635.
Maybe 670. Right? I forget. Okay.
Yeah.
But it was significantly lower than the Snapdragon 855 that was in the Pixel 4. And lo and behold, the performance hit wasn't huge. And that's a testament to Google's kind of controlling of the whole stack here. They build the phone, they build the operating system, they optimize the heck out of it. So you can use a lesser processor, still get that same smooth-ish Android experience with a great camera and great AI and all these, cool little fun features that they add on that make the experience, super pleasurable and also unique, without, playing at that high end. Let's face it, the most expensive part of the phone is the processor. Qualcomm charges a lot, and with the 865 now, they charge an absurd amount from what other people have kind of like, I don't know what Samsung pays exactly, but it's a lot. And you can tell by the price of their phones. The Note is $1,200 and $1,300, and the S20 Ultra is $1,400. I mean, these phones are expensive. Google can't play at that end of the pool. They're not gonna. So they made a choice, and they said, all right, listen, we're just going to go down to the 765G, which is still a good processor. I've tested it, and it's comparable to like an 845 in the Pixel 3. It's around there, which is slower, significantly slower than the 865, of course, but same as Apple. And like when they put an 812 chip in something, you're getting that optimization. You're getting that OS that's optimized for the phone and the chip, so it doesn't feel 2 generations old by any stretch. And by using that, they can save a little bit of money.
I was just going to say it's sort of interesting because we get to the point now where you're sort of at the good enough stage, and you don't really, because of the marriage of software and hardware, especially Apple with its stack and now Google with the stack that it's working with here. You don't have to have the cutting edge. I'm sure there are a lot of techie types, me among them, who want the latest, greatest, whatever. But for the vast majority of smartphone users, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are going to look at the Pixel 5 and say, well, it's got that lesser chip. I can't possibly buy that, at $100 less than the entry model last year. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. I'm sure Apple will continue to push the envelope. It has the cachet, I guess, if you will.
It also has the luxury of building its own chip. So the costs that a Google or a Samsung need to pay for licensing aren't there. They're not the same. So Apple is in a unique position to build faster and faster chips with small and smaller dies, and these, like the A14 is a 5 nanometer chip. I mean, Intel's not even doing that because they're super focused and super optimized for their own stuff.
Well, the question that comes up too is if you're looking at sort of, I hesitate to use the phrase dumbing down, but if you're backing away from latest and greatest, especially with this, one of the points that JR made in his post today, and I think this is something to talk about, is that if you think of these devices as places of innovation, where technology is rolled out and then you perfect it and move it down the line. Things like Project Soli, I think he mentioned.
Yeah, that got dumped.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I know Google has this tendency sometimes to roll things out and then suddenly they go away in a year or two.
Yeah.
And I think that, the Google folks said, oh, well, it'll be back in some form down the road. But
that's not
you disagree?
I think that's just a thing they will say to make it seem like they're, they can't just say, yeah, we're done with that. It's been a year. So yeah, they'll say we're going to still develop it, and I would be very surprised if we ever saw Project Soli or Motion Sense or anything that thing enabled in another product. First of all, it was gimmicky. Second of all, Google didn't really try to figure out how to incorporate it into the hardware. So it was just kind of, slapped to the top of the phone. It looked ugly, and it wasn't. It was a modern system that didn't feel modern. And that's, Apple with Face ID, it feels like it's integrated into the phone and that it's a seamless experience. Google never quite got there. Developer support was lacking. It was finicky. And, let's face it, not enough people bought the Pixel 4 to make it worthwhile. I mean, you need millions and millions of people. That's why whenever Apple does something, it's a thing, because they sell 30 million a quarter. These phones are moving in insane quantities. So it changes the landscape. Google is not doing that.
It's interesting you mentioned Face ID, because something else that looks like it's dropped is the secure face unlock.
Right. That's all part of that Soli camera setup that enabled both of those things. I will miss.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That to me, more than Project Soli with the gestures or whatever, right. Face Unlock, Face ID is something that I think people have become very accustomed to. It is very secure. I think
we've become accustomed to it as people who are. Well, I'm a part-time. You're a full-time Apple user. There's nothing on that level yet on Android. Huawei has a system that's they kind of use on some phones and not on others. Google had theirs on the 4. That's it. LG had something, time of flight with palm recognition, and they got rid of that. Like, no one's been able to develop a system on Android that works and is as universal and is as seamless and as ubiquitous as Face ID. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah. It's also interesting too that I think one of the selling points for the Pixel 5 and the Pixel line in general is the fact that you get, updates to the operating system very quickly, as
Hmm.
opposed to, the carrier phones where you may or may not get an update to Android until 6 months,
Yep.
next year, maybe never. And, that for me, I mean, I've obviously always been an iPhone person and presume I will continue to be. But if I were to jump to Android, I'd want a Pixel for that reason,
Yeah, I agree.
and yeah. And so it's interesting that, I mean, Google, even if it's offering up new hardware that may not be quite cutting edge, still has a lot of, has a real story to tell here. And I'm sure will, I think they'll do well.
Yeah, I mean that's always been the play. And they've been playing that up more and more lately. Android 11 is a good example where there are some features that are exclusive to the Pixel. When Android 11 rolled out, the Pixel got stuff that other phones didn't. And Google is, they're playing their advantage basically. I mean, they own Android, they own the Pixel, and if they're going to put features in there, like for example, there's a new hold calling. Like you can be on call with, I don't know, Verizon or somebody, and if you're on hold, you can tap a button and Google Assistant will listen to the music and let you know when somebody picks up. That's a really cool feature that you're not going to get on any other phone. It's not going to happen. That's a Pixel thing. Same thing with the camera. All those camera features. That's a Pixel thing, and that's Google's strength. The strangeness about this launch. So there's the Pixel 5 for $699. Then there's the Pixel 4a 5G for $499. Now, the difference between them, the Pixel 5 has a smaller screen. The Pixel 5 has an aluminum back rather than a plastic back, which, I mean, who cares? No, you're putting a case on it anyway. It doesn't have a headphone jack. The Pixel 4a 5G does. And it has a slightly bigger battery, 8 gigs of RAM versus 6 gigs of RAM. Very, very small stuff. The main stuff, it has the same processor, the same camera, and the same kind of feature set, and also the same guaranteed 3 years of Android updates that Google gives out. And I don't understand why anybody would buy the Pixel 5 over the Pixel 4a 5G. It doesn't make any sense to me why they both exist. And it doesn't make any sense why anybody would choose, okay, maybe you really want wireless charging. Is that worth $200? I don't think so.
Yeah. I did, just for a point of clarification, the
Yeah.
Pixel 5 offers 5G connectivity.
Yeah, they both
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
The Pixel 5 offers, I'll get real technical for a moment, sub 6 and millimeter wave, which is basically T-Mobile and Verizon at this point. The Pixel 4a 5G only offers sub 6, which is T-Mobile. If you want Verizon's and millimeter wave, you have to pay an extra $100 through Verizon to get that. Although I wouldn't recommend doing that because it's barely anywhere. Like you're
Right.
going to be paying for a special modem that you're not even going to really take advantage of, if at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. Here we are. We've got, Google's new phones. We've got what I presume
Yeah.
will be Apple's new iPhones out within the month or so.
Probably
In
in a couple of weeks.
a
Yeah.
couple of weeks, and then maybe shipping, depending on which model you want,
Yep.
late October or early November. And of course, the big thing will be around 5G. And I'm not convinced that people understand that 5G is
Oh, they
really
absolutely do
not
not.
going. It's not going to be the big thing this year. Maybe by 21, 22, certainly by 23.
Yeah, that's more likely.
But people are going to be jumping on the 5G bandwagon this year for a technology that, the infrastructure is just not there yet.
Yeah, we were talking about that today in our internal Slack service, and yeah, it's very confusing and it's also very misleading. Where Apple, to its credit, doesn't appear to be raising prices for 5G. So you're going to be still paying $1,000 for the iPhone 12 Pro and 1100, and probably $699 for the iPhone 12, and maybe less for the Mini. So that is so you're not going to go into buying an iPhone 12 thinking you're getting this value proposition that isn't there. Google, it kind of is. I mean, they're charging $699 for a Pixel 5. That's significantly less than the Pixel 4 in terms of what it delivers at the time. So, while it may be cheaper, it's still more expensive than it should be because of that 5G modem. And Samsung does the same thing. You know, the Note is more expensive than last year. Everything on Android is a little bit more expensive than it could be or should be. And when people buy that, they plaster 5G all over the place, and you buy it and you don't even know if you, first of all, have a plan that supports it, B, are in an area that covered, or C, you're going to see any meaningful speed increase if you are. Some of the speeds.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say some of the speeds are at or around what LTE is.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's not really a noticeable improvement. Don't you think, though, that given the publicity in the industry, at least around 5G, that even if the infrastructure isn't there to deliver it yet, for the phone makers, this is sort of the price of entry. How could you roll out a phone in 2020 that didn't have 5G, even if, and that's sort of where the marketing has gotten ahead of the hardware or the infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's more of a U.S. issue than it is globally, because there are, substantially larger and more powerful 5G networks all around the globe. And the U.S. it's really not there yet. T-Mobile has a nationwide network. I have it here and I've used it here. And, on some days, on like the right spot, if the wind's blowing the right way, I can get 100 plus, which is great. It's not, I can download a movie in 2 seconds as I see on the commercials. It's a little better than LTE. On a good day, I can get 100 or close 80 on LTE over Verizon too. So the speeds that are promised aren't going to be there. And I think there's going to be a lot of confusion, and, that's where we come into play. We're going to have to write articles and say, hey, listen, this is what you're getting. This is, what you need to do. And this is what you can expect out of your 5G iPhone 12. Yeah.
Well, I
don't think Google is necessarily trying to deceive anybody. I think, as you say, if you launch a phone in 2020, you pretty much have to have a 5G modem right now. And if nothing else, you're future proofing, because in a year or two, when you'll still have that phone, at least, the networks will be there, and the plans will all include 5G, and you're going to want to have a phone that can tap into them. So, it's not like you're getting gouged or anything, but the reality versus the marketing is a little bit off.
Gee, that's never happened before.
Yeah. Particularly not with phone carriers.
Right, exactly. Well, just to pull it back real quick to Google before we go. I mean, do we, all right, so we've had one pivot, another pivot. Yeah. Do we think in a couple, 2 or 3 years, there'll be another Google pivot? Or
I mean, this is Google's unfortunate cross to bear. Is, you can see it in their messaging apps. I don't know if it's a focus thing or if they just don't necessarily think things through as far as what they want, but they very much iterate in public. Can you imagine Apple coming out with a high-end phone and the next year changing it or featuring and getting rid? Like, they don't do that. There are things that they try and doesn't work. Like a perfect example is 3D Touch, where that was around for a few generations and then they just quietly got rid of it. I'm not saying that they're perfect. But Google, man, they just shift the car left and right. Just because, I mean, it's remarkable. I think this is the smartest strategy so far. I think there's too many phones. I think 2 of them is fine. They don't need 3. But this is what the Pixel should be. I've said it all along. The Pixel is a platform. It's not a flagship phone. And if they treat it as such, and can keep prices in the $400 to $700 range and still add all these AI features and have the speed and the optimizations and the battery and all the things that we want in a Pixel, the experience, not the hardware, is what Google has always been selling. And by stripping away the premium parts and the $1,000 price tag, I think they're much better positioned to do that.
I agree. Juliet, any thoughts? I didn't mean to cut you out there back and forth with Mike.
No, I think that was great. I think you guys really covered it. It seems like the new Pixel phone is, at least from my view anyway, it's going to be, if you are an Android user and you are looking for a less expensive phone, it seems like the no-brainer choice is probably going to be to go with the Pixel.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of really good mid-range Android phones. There's the S20 Fan Edition that just came out.
But again, if you want that true Android experience, the Pixel's going to be your only option.
That's with
that caveat.
It's the speed of upgrades, it's the AI stuff, and it's the camera stuff. But if you want really good design, you're going to probably pick a Samsung phone. If you want 120 hertz screen, you're going to probably go with the OnePlus 8T that's coming up. There are features that it doesn't have. But yeah, if you're purely into Android and the latest software features, the Pixel, I would say the Pixel 4a 5G. I would not buy the 5 for $200 less. I think that's the smarter play. And don't get the Verizon ultra wideband version because it's a waste of money.
And there you have it.
Take that, Verizon.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for calling in and joining me as always. I really appreciate it. I think this is pretty interesting to just see how Google is really shaping its own smartphone strategy and how it is kind of different than, the Samsungs and the Apples of the world. And if anything crazy changes, we'll probably be back and saying something else.
Yeah, and the COVID stuff is that's kind of leading all of these changes, I believe, because even there's talks that Apple's coming out with the iPhone Mini. Samsung last week came out with the $700 S20. Like all these companies are kind of rethinking how they're marketing and how they're selling these phones because A, people have less money to spend, and B, they're not as mobile as they were. So where you wanted $1,000 phone because you had to commute every day and you went out every day. I have my Verizon whatever the heck phone package, and I use like 1 gig of data a month. I'm paying $120 for nothing because I don't use it. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. So if you're buying a phone now, it's not the device that it was 6 months ago. Of course, that'll all change, but I think the landscape is going to shift in a real way, away from commuting, away from public gatherings, big ones, for the foreseeable future. And smartphone makers are really starting to pivot to kind of answer those calls.
It's interesting. One quick final thought, Juliet. Based on what you just said, Michael, I agree. It'll be interesting to see whether Apple in particular, the shift, there will be a shift in focus from phones to like desktops and cameras. And I mean, if we're all going to be sitting around doing video talks for the next year or 2 or 3 or however long we are, suddenly that becomes more important. I mean, not that they're going to drop the phone or, they'll continue to iterate there, but priorities do shift. And
Apple is a little bit more insulated from that, but yeah, I agree. And we can talk next week all about how they should open FaceTime up to everybody.
Please, let's do. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much again. I really appreciate it as always. And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every single time we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments about, the Pixel 5, any grand theories about Google's smartphone strategy, leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you, or I'll get back to you on Mike or Ken's behalf. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.